And they're mosaic photographs where, the orbiter will take a bunch of images, a bunch of shots, and then they'll lay them next to each other and form a mosaic of a larger site that's been targeted for satellite photography, right? And the sergeant says, "We found a city." And he starts showing him these mosaics, putting them next to each other. And they're high resolution photographs of a megalithic city on the dark side of the moon. Spherical buildings, polygonal buildings, obelisks like the needles in Egypt, and dishes, he said, like that looked like radio telescope dishes. Huge structures, which I guess the resolution of the photographs was so good that he could tell that they weren't made of metal. They were made of something like a poured stone, kind of like concrete, which is interesting because a lot of ancient sites on Earth are made from that type of material, right? These enigmatic megalithic structures on Earth seem to have a similar construction as will Carl Wolf, at least what was presented to him as a city on the dark side of the moon. And so he's looking at this thing, and somebody walked in, and so the sergeant cuts off his illegally volunteering this classified information to Wolf, and he goes to work repairing the photography machine. But anyway, he said he went home and he expected that either that night or like sometime in the next week or sometime in the next year, we would hear about this city that had been photographed on the dark side of the moon. And of course, it was never revealed, right? So this was one of the most striking early testimonies that I heard from out of Greer's Disclosure Project that got me really interested in the moon. And what's really creepy is
that was 60 what?
65. A few years before Apollo. And what's really disturbing is that this disclosure wave that we're in the midst of right now began in 2017, right, with that New York Times piece.
Right.
So around about 2018, there are serious discussions about subpoenaing people to get testimony from them. And then later than that, Grush now, spearheaded this initiative to have people come and testify in front of Congress and release individuals from their security oaths, right? Well, guess when poor Carl Wolf met with an untimely end. 2018, 1 year after disclosure starts, his bike was run over by a truck.
Oh boy, hello guys, David Vose here again. And boy, it's been raining. It was cold last night. Got down, into the, 40s and stuff. And it's just like another wave of cold weather, and then boom, now this morning it's finally the sun coming out. But it's beautiful. I'm just kind of basking in the sun, and the little chickens are enjoying it, and the dogs are out laying out in the sun. Well, we've had a couple of days of rain, and here it comes. The monsoon rains every day. It'll just, the clouds will come through and we'll get these thunderstorms and rain. So I haven't had to water the garden for a couple of days, and hopefully the fun begins. But guys, I want to share with you today some of my thoughts on what is happening right now. And I've been seeing this now for about a year or two, that I've been noticing this or more. But this is a complicated video that I want to do today, because I believe that we can determine something. Maybe not absolutely conclusively, but I think we can determine this to be true, that we're going to conclude here. Relatively conclusive. You never know. I mean, my goodness, we thought that the stars were hundreds of light years away, thousands of light years away, galaxies strung across the infinite expanse of nothing, a vacuum of nothing of space with temperatures to the point where it doesn't exist, because anything that exists is going to have some movement or some vibration, some temperature, but there is no temperature out in space. There's no light. They claim you can't see the stars or the moon or the light or anything. Just blackness, and it's just a void. It's a vacuum, meaning there's nothing in it. But yet they can measure it, and things can travel through this nothing. But so if we could believe that, and they told us this, and now we're looking at this and we're realizing what they've been telling us all along, is they were telling us that it was nothing. And beyond the nothing, and an infinite amount of nothing, there is this, not an infinite amount, but 100,000 light years away or whatever, they found a little star. They claim it's a star just like our sun. They told us what our sun is, a big ball of hydrogen explosions, gamma rays and all this stuff going on up there, extreme temperatures, nuclear explosions. They know this, they say. Just like they know that the vacuum of space, the nothingness, the infinite nothingness has interspersed without the nothing little things just like our sun. And around this 100,000 light years away, around this little thing that they know is the sun, and they know what it's made out of, the composition of what it's exploding and how it's working, and whether it's uranium fusion or plutonium or some other hydrogen or whatever. They got dwarf, suns and giant suns and brown dwarfs and all these different kinds of suns that they all know about, hundreds of thousands of light years away. Which I don't know if some of you even know how far away that might be, according to what they're saying, like almost infinity away, and yet we're seeing the little light twinkle. And though you cannot see it with the naked eye, nor even with any kind of telescope, or of course they've got telescopes, right, that are even beyond visible light. They're just using some other gamma ray or something, which we don't even comprehend what they're talking about. Somehow with some machine or some philosophy that they've developed, whether the star is dim or bright, they can determine through all that vastness of nothing that this little flicker is bigger than that flicker, and we know what it's made out of too, and why it's exploding. But anyway, around this little flicker, they've determined there's a planet, and they've also discovered water on it. And this is getting even crazier. Over the last several years, I've been hearing them say, we found water on a planet far, far away in another galaxy. Oh, yeah. We know what we're living in. We're living in a galaxy 2,000 light years across, 200,000 light years across. And even though we're in the middle of it, like a little speck of dust in a forest, somehow we know what this forest looks like, this 1,000-mile forest. We know all the trees, what their varieties are, how close they are together, how tall they are. And we can get back beyond the forest and look down and see what the forest shape is, even though we've never gotten off this little speck of dust, right? Maybe they claim they went to the next speck of dust, like in the soil, deep beneath the ground, but we can't, possibly believe that they could have surmised inside the dirt what the forest looked like above them, and have named all the trees in the forest and know exactly how far it is and all this stuff. So this is ridiculous, but yet we somehow believed all of this. And then along comes some crazy stuff, after World War II, the Roswell thing, and all the crop circles and the abductions. We never saw anybody abducted. We never got abducted. But we saw it on George Norrie. Boy, every night at midnight. Here comes George Norrie telling us about the abductions. And some of these guys on the radio were like interrupted in their broadcast from some guy that was a time traveler too. We knew that. But all this, we just got the speculation and this, our minds started churning. And then David Icke came out with the reptilians. And we're like, reptilians, oh no, they're coming to get us, and they got little scales too. And some of them are in Congress, and we saw them, pictures of them walking through Congress, right? CGI? Oh, why would we believe CGI? I mean, we couldn't possibly believe that somebody would stoop that low, right? And now we're getting feeds in our TikTok with little miniature Trumps arguing with Joe Rogan's little babies, talking, and Van Halen with his guitar singing some song with a little baby version. Not CGI. It's just some amazing thing that they're doing. And by the way, AI, we're now being told, I just saw Glenn Beck, he's jumping into the fray, who's now warning everyone, this is like some huge breaking news on Glenn Beck that it's over. The computers are taking over and they're going to kill us all. And there's nothing we can do about it. You can't unplug them. They're so smart that if we program to do this, they're going to, let's say we program them to shut down. Well, they'll just reroute the programming and reinvent the whole program, and they'll just destroy us because we're trying to mess with them. And so they're going to start killing everybody soon. And we've only got a few hours left. This is what Glenn Beck says. I mean, a few hours. And if we don't do something, and if we don't drop a bomb like a nuclear weapon, which we don't even know if they exist, because they told us years ago that nuclear weapons, hydrogen bombs or nuclear bombs or whatever they are, who knows? Plutonian bombs or some other crazy whatever they're making up these days. If they're dropped in an area, you cannot return to that area for 1,000 years because you'll be radiated to death. And all the animals will be having two heads and be deformed. And I mean, first of all, there's a contradiction. If you can't survive radiation, your skin will fall off and you'll die. How are they going to actually be alive well enough to have two heads or two tails? I've seen snakes with two heads and stuff like in the garden up in Idaho, out in my mother's garden. We saw it all the time. So that's not something that's completely unusual. It does happen. Siamese twins, this happens. But they claim that at first it's going to kill everything and nothing will grow. Then it thrived and all the animals were running around thriving. Very few of them with two heads as far as they ever told us. And there's literally cities and people will be populating the area now. And they don't seem to have any Siamese twins resurgence or anything going on there. So without, it coming out and saying, oh, well, we lied, or hey, we were wrong or something, they've just gone on. Chernobyl, Hiroshima, there's people living there. And remember Fukushima? Not very long ago, seemed like yesterday for me. I can't even believe how long it's been since the thingy, right? It's just like it was just a nightmare just yesterday, and now it's like we've forgotten all about it. But not only did we forget about 9/11, and everybody's gone on to the next one, and they believe the next one. Every time the next one comes, oh, another school shooting. Oh, boy, this is crazy. Oh, another tornado just struck a little town and wiped it off the map right where they need to, clear the area, or a fire or something. Okay, so we believe this. 9/11, then the thingy. But remember the Fukushima? We were being told constantly in our little TikTok feeds, if they even had TikTok back then. I don't even remember. But wherever we were getting it, right? Fox News or something, it was constantly, wall to wall, 24/7. Oh, we're all going to die because Fukushima is spreading. It's going into the ocean. All the fish are going to die. Once all the fish dies, the sea weeds and the lichens and all the fish and the shellfish, and then the mammals and the whales and the dolphins will die, and then we're gone. We're gone. We're done. And we only got a little time left. And now years have gone by, and I haven't heard one peep out of the Fukushima crowd. I guess they fixed it, right? They cleaned it up. Well, you can't clean it up. Well, maybe they scraped it all up and before it got too much into the ocean and put it in a big barge and took it to Carlsbad Caverns and dumped it down in there. I heard they're doing that. Like there's all kinds of nuclear waste down in the Carlsbad Cavern. Don't go there and visit, because if you go down there to take a little look-see, you might get radiated. Or maybe there is no such thing as radiation. Who knows? I know of a guy in Washington working at a plant where they were making all this nuclear waste, and they had these pools of water which they claimed were full of nuclear waste, and signs saying don't go near it, you'll die. And there was a guy that worked there and found out that it was just a hoax. And this is on YouTube too. You can go find it. I think it's like Richmond, Washington. He goes and he would go in and swim in this little pond where they claim it's just radiation waste. And thrived, never got cancer, never died, never got sick, and they just kind of hushed that up and threw it under the rug. But, so we don't know. I mean, look, everything they've been telling us is a lie, and yet we're still like, well, maybe not. Maybe a lie is not a lie. I mean, maybe they were really serious about Fukushima and Chernobyl, but they just cleaned it up. They're so smart. Well, why didn't they explain to us how they got all of this radiation that was in every element, every atom, every photon, every little microorganism or molecule, and it's now ruined. It's destroyed the DNA. It's manipulated all of the compounds and molecules and atoms, and you can't go back into that area. It's going to be radiating all of this radiation for 1,000 years. So either they should have come out and said we were wrong and nuclear weapons don't do that, or they should have said we cleaned it up and shown us how they did that, how they got all the atoms and molecules in the area and got rid of them somewhere, discarded them, and replaced all the atoms and molecules and the dirt and the dust and the wind and the moisture and every, air molecule and water molecule, not to have this radiation damage. And they've cleaned it up. Now it's all growing fine. Well, obviously, you and I both know there's no possible way they could have done that. Just as we know there's no possible way they've ever gone to the moon. If the moon is 240,000 miles beyond a Van Halen belt with radiation so severe that it would cook the hardest metal known to man, would melt it like hundreds of, thousands of degrees Fahrenheit is what they're claiming. So they were wrong about that, or they found some kind of metal that could withstand something that the Earth and other planets or nothing could withstand. I mean, our own Earth has got to have like 1,000 miles worth of ozone in order to protect us from all this radiation. And somehow or another, they've also shot off a probe that is gone, 1 billion miles out beyond Pluto now, and it's taking pictures of planets in other galaxies. And they've discovered water. And they're sending these pictures back, like, I don't know, almost 1 trillion miles away. And, of course, we're spinning and rotating, and somehow they're catching this signal off of a satellite or something. I don't know, or a rigged up coat hanger antenna, and getting these clear pictures. Of course, all the pictures they show us are CGI. Are you beginning to understand that they're lying to us? So now, if you're aware of the lies, now they start with Project Really Confuse You. Yeah, that's the name of this project, Really Confuse You. Because now they're going to say, oh, yeah, disclosure, we were lying, maybe, or, we didn't want to tell you that there's UFOs and aliens, and these little green reptiles from this Draco constellation are really running the show. And maybe they are interdimensional, which would be spirits like devils, but we ain't going to call them that. But whatever they are, they've taught us because we captured one of their ships and some of their bodies and looked at their bodies, and our scientists figured out that they're like definitely cold-blooded reptiles, but they're smarter than we are, and they run the universe. And they've got ships that can, I guess, you fill them with kerosene and light them, and they can go faster than the speed of light into the void of nothing, beyond nothing, into the infinite vast, I don't know, maybe go through a wormhole, black hole, something, and they come out in some other planet where they actually live in another dimension. But some of them got lost and couldn't get home, and they're on our moon, is what they're telling us. Now they found cities on the dark side of the moon. Oh, but wait, there's more. They're not really reptilians. The other storyline is they're tall whites. Because some of them are little grays, but some of them are tall whites. And the tall whites are giants. And maybe this has something to do with the Anunaki that somebody else made up a few years back. And these Bavarian, Sitchin, Velenkowski, and Van Daniken, and these individuals that made these number $1 million best sellers, they spread this rumor and this propaganda around the world about somehow or another about the Anunnaki, and started getting us to believe that it's literally in our Bible that people came from some other planet, even though the Bible doesn't mention any other planets or solar systems, because the Bible doesn't even mention the word solar system. But somehow or another, because the Bible speaks of the stars, we just assume that the stars are solar systems, even though we don't know what a solar is or a sun. We don't really even know what the moon is, because we're lying that we even went there. But then again, maybe we did go to the moon if the moon really isn't that far away and they fly up there on an airplane, see? And it's just a base, or maybe it's a ship or some sort of manufactured thing. Well, I'm going to show you some information, friends, that would possibly lead some minds to conclude that maybe the moon is just a structure built with metal beams and metal, like a ship made out of metal. According to some people, when they went, the moon people, Neil Armstrong, whatever, they went up there and planted that flag. They had to try to dig a little hole to put the flag in. And the first 2 inches of the moon is dust, like powder, fine powder, like chalk, crushed up, like talcum powder. And they could only go down about an inch or two, and they went bing, 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 and it was solid metal. And they had to drill a hole in the metal to get this flag to stick. This is what they're telling us, along with the other lie that they even went there, right? Or maybe they did go there, but that's not the lie. The lie is that it's some crazy feat that no one could accomplish because it's 240,000 light, years or whatever out in the space beyond the vacuum and a Van Allen belt. But if they did go there and they're telling the truth, then it appears that they are telling these truths to lie to us, to get us to believe that it's a spaceship. Again, everything goes back to the big lie, that aliens are coming. And why that lie? Because that way you don't have to believe in Jesus or deity. It's just that the evolution of the, somehow evolution on some other planet made the snakes more intelligent than the humans, right? They evolved in these little reptilian forms, and they look just like serpents, but now they didn't evolve like in beauty. They didn't evolve in stature. They don't stand upright like humans and speak eloquently, but they go, right? But they got these big brains. Evolution has developed their brain, right? Right inside of a little serpent body or a scorpion-looking thing. And, they don't even make love the way we do. They just, do a little elbow bump and complain about how humans have to waste all of this period of time in their life, or like a third of their life, in some sort of homeostasis. They don't actually go in drawers, but they go in this little thing they call a bedroom, turn off the lights and go into a coma. And they spend a third of their life in this. And then when they wake up, they're still tired. So they need this bean juice to survive. Coffee beans, anyone? And yeah, yeah, it's a joke I saw on TikTok. They're getting pretty funny, these aliens. But see, that's only the story that they're using to scare the crap out of you. But then there's the other evolving story that's been kind of evolving as the basis for all of this propaganda. And this goes back, and you'll be surprised to find that this has been taught all the way back to, I don't know, probably Plato or Aristotle, or even far more recently and more distinctly by Emanuel Swedenborg. Sweden? Old Sweden? And Borg, like the Steins and the Vauskis? Well, maybe. But, they're always the one in charge, these Bavarians, and they always coming up with all the inventions and like, whoa, we've got this thing called a nuclear bomb that, well, maybe it doesn't even exist. Oh, Freud is so smart. Oh, maybe he's an idiot. Or Darwin, oh, well, he was wrong. But, Marx was a great guy, right? He invented the way you're supposed to have a country run so that everybody's happy and everybody gets the same amount. Nobody's ruling over anybody. Putin, anyone? Well, hey, at least they got the KGB, which is an American thing to do. We got the CIA, right? Yeah. But this guy, Swedenborg, I'm going to share with you some of his beliefs. And now remember, he was in the 1700s and he wrote a book, well, 2 books called Heaven and Hell. And it's fascinating. I mean, this guy was kind of like an L. Ron Hubbard before its time, some complicated book about clearing your psyche from some demon Xenon or Xeno or whatever they call this Xeno. That's the deity that really runs everything, that lived on a faraway planet and they exploded. And then they came here to do another experience. Kind of like the story we get with the Superman, Krypton and all that. Well, these stories nowadays, they call them novels. They make movies on them, but then they just say, oh, but maybe it's based on reality, just to scare you a little bit, even though we have no clue. It's like having a movie where there's a boogeyman under your bed who's got 3 mouths, one within the other, a reptilian body, and scorpion little antennae, and he's hovering under your bed every night, waiting for just the right time to come out and go, and eat you, right? And this, maybe it could be true, right? Or is it just a movie? Well, maybe all the sci-fi, Star Wars, Star Trek is just a movie, but maybe they want to put this idea in your head because they're also running these theories by you. And they've been doing this since the 1700s, perhaps. Because Swedenborg believed that the moon was inhabited by these beings. Now, in the early 1800s, I'm sure a lot of people would have been familiar with Swedenborg's work, especially those who were in the know, who had read, the Hegel's and the Nietzsche's and the Marxism and all this stuff that's going on. And these people would have been very familiar with the prior generation of speculation and scary stories. And everybody loved Swedenborg because he was the Tesla of the day. I mean, he invented everything, airplanes and phones and everything, before its time. And along with all these inventions, he had all this philosophical work. And the story that he wrote in the book Heaven and Hell is just literally crazy. Because the universe is made up of, in his theory, which I believe is somewhat true. He was a brilliant person. Perhaps they did know things like the devil does, but they just tell you something to twist the real truth. Although, as I'll show you, Swedenborg was a Christian, a very devout Christian, as was Sir Isaac Newton, who read the Emerald Tablets as well. And as you guys know, I've talked about Sir Isaac Newton. And I believe he was a wonderful man, as do I believe Swedenborg was probably a good man. I don't know for sure, but I'm going to give you both sides of the story today. Because not only did Swedenborg talk about the inhabitants of the moon, but the up-and-coming great prophet, Helena Blavatsky, which, again, I love her and her work, and I believe that it was literally divine providence that she wrote her book, Isis Unveiled, and I think about 2 or 3 books that were really, important books that nobody wants you to read today because there's too much information in there. So as soon as she came along and gave this information to the world, and crazy, syncretism with all the other religions and truths that we here on this channel agree with, somebody came along, Alice Bailey and a bunch of other weirdos, Steiner and all these people that even today people are just enamored with. Enamored, is that a word? Enamored with Steiner and Bailey and these what they call theosophy. Now, I know people credit Helena Blavatsky with theosophy. Well, she certainly wrote some books and had an explosion of truth and knowledge, which none of these other people did. They just went over her works and tried to malign them, if you would understand what I mean. I mean, they did this to Charles Russell. Judge Rutherford came in and threw out all of his teachings about the Great Pyramid and astrology and all the different things. And the belief in Jesus as a divine, as our Lord and all these things. And then change it all to some sort of, sacred roots tradition or whatever, and worshiping Yahweh and the law and all this stuff. And you don't get salvation. Or Brigham Young coming in and getting rid of all of Joseph Smith's teachings and starting this pedophilia and pornography that's going on amongst this FBI ruling class now in the Great Salt Lake and the Western Hemisphere. And they control the politics all over the country in some sort of a Masonic ritual that goes back definitely to the Albert Pike made-up Masonry. Because they're the same rituals where you stick your hand beyond a curtain and shake hands with somebody that claims to be deity, and he tells you that you're just, going beyond the veil, and they're watching over you. But if you keep your nose clean and do whatever they tell you and obey them in everything, they might allow you to the next initiation and tell you a little more secrets. But all the while, you're making these vows and getting deeper and deeper. And then you wake up one day and find out, oh, we run the world underground. And we've got UFOs, but aren't from other planets, but we're just hoaxing the world. And we're running this show. And we're running Las Vegas and the Coca-Cola companies. But yes, we don't drink Coca-Cola. Anyway, it's insane. All the things that's going on. But in some way, a little bit like Swedenborg, Emanuel Swedenborg, Helena Blavatsky came out with some pretty amazing controversial thoughts and ideas or teachings. One of which is that there might be people living on the moon or maybe even the sun and all the planets. But I don't know about the stars, but somewhere vaguely there is some kind of hierarchy, and they called them ascended masters. Now, you might be aware that they have another name for the Ascended Masters. Wait till you hear it. The Great White Brotherhood. The Great White Brotherhood. Now, if you look that up, they're going to say, oh, but, they don't mean white people. Tall whites. Get it? They just mean spiritually advanced, pure people. And they just use the white as a symbol for pure. Okay. But it's weird that they always say they're like giant. They're very tall, these white masters. Where do they live? Oh, well, on a planet somewhere on Nibiru, or some other tradition will say on Shambhala, right? Or Zion in the north, right? Oh, man. Well, You see, I'm not trying to make fun of Helena Blavatsky because I love the woman, and I think that she was giving us a lot of syncretism and teaching us not just something that she made up, but from the ancient teachings. And I think she was clear, Helena Blavatsky, that she wasn't talking about a group of tall white people. However, Theosophy, they did try to make it about that. And then as you go down, you've got Elizabeth Clare Prophet that kind of took over the show after Alice Bailey died and Steiner. And Elizabeth Clare Prophet claimed to be one of the two witnesses. This is one of the reasons why she's not telling the truth, because she obviously did not bring in the Great Tribulation and lie on her side in sackcloth for 3.5 days and get raised up to heaven. And of course, the other one of the two witnesses, according to her, was her husband that had died and had gone over the other side of the veil. And kind of like, Elena Dayanan, who says that she's married to some being called Thor. And she believes in the Galactic Federation and that Inky is kind of the deity who made us. And we're saved in Inky's blood, but not in Jesus. And Jesus was a big hoax. But of course, Thor, the Norwegian and the Danites who went north, created the whole Sweden, Dansmark, Danube, Dniester area. And she knows this. And so she calls herself El Anna, right? The heavenly deity, Danan. Like the Tuatha De Danann, right? That were the tribe of Dan that went up there. Anyway, she claims that this Thor, the deity Thor, is her husband. And he's on the galactic ship and she's in communication. So they all got their stories. And y'all believe in it all, right? And Karina Pataki's right there getting her book deal and doing shows with her. And they're all believing in this, right? And it's all about the ascended white masters, the tall whites in scientific curriculum, if you'd like me to translate that into modern scientific language, which is now being something briefed to Congress by a man named Greer. And I think we already showed you a clip of this, and I'm going to show you another small little clip about this disclosure to Congress by Greer. It includes the idea that the moon is a base for some tall whites that are they call them Nordic, tall Nordic peoples. So now they're getting more specific. Well, let's go back to Anazis, who believed in the Aryan race. Now, again, they got this from Helena Blavatsky, but Helena Blavatsky didn't believe it meant white people. Aryan race didn't mean white people. Aryan is like Orion. It's a star constellation, and it's coming up over the horizon. It's the story of Osiris and Horus, and it's the story of the human race being born on the horizon to become like deity after they've gone through the Dark Knight, which is, a Batman show. Well, yeah, Batman rules the night and Superman rules the day, but, Superman's got a serpent on his chest. And his father's name is Jor-El, and that means the great El, and his name is the son of El, or Cat-El, or something like that. Anywho, all these stories, they seem to be infatuated with, but twisting them and embellishing it all. So now they've changed the word Aryan to mean white people again. Nordic people, they run the show. There's a Council of 12, I guess, somewhere in the Antarctic. I don't know. Evidently, they got a base on the moon, too. Let me show you this clip.
The important point, and the disturbing one, is that he saw slave labor on the moon, and the people who were directing it were these tall Nordic-looking fellows, one of whom could see swan. And this has been reported by other remote viewers, where sometimes when they're sent to a target, whether it's a contemporaneous target or whether it's some event in the past, they're witnessed by whoever's there,
Right.
as if like they're a ghost, and those people are seeing a ghost.
Yeah.
Well, this Nordic on the dark side of the moon saw Swan, and he got the distinct impression like the guy was telling him telepathically, why the fuck are you here? You don't belong here.
Right.
Get out of here. After Swan was sent, we kept sending people to the moon, remote viewers. And we distinctly got the message from these guys on the moon, do not keep sending people here. This is off limits. And we didn't listen to them. And the last viewer that we sent up there, his soul is trapped on the moon. His body is in a coma in a special medical facility run by the CIA. And his family has been given like medical compensation or whatever. They told him they told his family that the guy had died in the line of duty or whatever. And he's been held in stasis for years and years as they wait for his soul to come back from the moon, where apparently there's the capacity to lure and trap somebody's consciousness, which they finally did to one of these CIA remote viewers after repeatedly telling them not to surveil whatever's going on.
We copy you down, Eagle. Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
Oh, okay. So there you go. Now, here's the thing that I don't know if you're picking up on. This has been promulgated from all sides for years and years and years. And they're even going back and using the prophets or the Bible or Swedenborg, who said there were beings on the moon. And they're like, oh, yeah. Well, of course, they were tall white people, right? And, oh, yeah, Helena Blavatsky, she's an authority. We'll appeal to her. She said there were an Aryan race that's going to take over. Well, yeah, it's the new race of man that has now gone through the dark night and coming into the light. It's not a white race. It's not anything about white people. Aryan doesn't mean white, never meant white. But the Nazis wanted you to believe it did. And they wanted you to believe that they're the master race. Or is it the ascended masters? Oh, yeah. Well, same thing. It's a plot. And the problem why this is going to get so difficult for many people, because we're going, as the Bible says, the Satan's been thrown down, having a short time, coming to deceive the entire inhabited earth. And every man, woman, and child will be deceived. The small and the great, the rich and the poor. And only a very few will not be deceived. They'll have the seal of the living deity on their forehead. Now, the reason they're not deceived is that seal is the promised Holy Spirit. And without that, which is the love of the truth, that you might be saved or delivered from the wrath that's here and coming, the judgments, the plagues. If you don't get out of Babylon, you're going to share with her in her sins and partake of her plagues, my friends. This is what it says. And the only people that are going to survive are those who have the wisdom to remember Daniel and interpret Daniel. Because, you've got to use the Holy Spirit, and she will teach us all things we need to know in the hour in which we need to know it. And if you don't have that Holy Spirit, and you don't have any oil in your lamps when that time comes, you may be a Christian, but your oil's run out, and you're starting to believe the lies. You've been deceived, and you're lukewarm, and he's going to spit you out, right? And if you do what Jesus told you to do, and stay close, and have faith, and love the Lord, and never forget the admonition of the apostles, and turn to this doctrine of devils that are being spread, all these doctrines all over the world to itch their ears, and they'll start believing their master's delayed his coming and begin to beat their fellow servants. It's coming. But if you don't have that spirit, which is the love of the truth and the sound mind, you will begin to believe these things. And they will appeal to the Bible. They will appeal to Joseph Smith. Oh, Joseph Smith said there were people on the moon. Well, isn't this interesting? Maybe the moon's not that far away. I'm going to show you a few things that Swedenborg and Joseph Smith and others said, and Helena Blavatsky. And I'm going to show you that it's not at all what these individuals are saying today. But they're going to appeal to the Bible and to astrology, and they're going to make all the signs and flash them around and the devil sign blatantly in your face. But at the same time, oh, it's just astrology. It's a pyramid. Why, the pyramid's wonderful. We'll put it on the dollar bill and turn it upside down. Well, what's the top of the pyramid? The pinnacle. That's where Jesus was taken, to the pinnacle of the temple, to where there was all knowledge. The chief cornerstone. So I'm not saying any of this is false in its true understanding, but if you start twisting it and start saying, oh, that the masters, Jesus and Buddha and Zoroaster and biblical Daniel and Ezekiel and the prophets, that somehow they taught all this by twisting what they're saying to deceive the entire inhabited world and mistranslate the Bible and stuff like this. Pull a verse out of the Bible in Genesis 6:4 and say, oh yeah, there was some beings on other planets that came here, they're aliens, and they were big tall whites and they run the world, and they're really deity. They created us. It's Inky. Well, like I said, there's some of that's true. There is an Inky in the Bible. It's called Enoch, but there were two of them. Enki, or Enoch, the seventh in line from Adam, who built a city, and the city was taken up into heaven with all the 144,000. And all that was left on the earth was those who did not or were not ready to attain unto that. And they began to fall deeper and deeper, and they fell to a place where they became no longer deities, but demi-deities. Now, Noah was one of the original individuals that lived for thousands of years, and he lived for 600 years and preached this gospel and warned the wicked. And then the flood came, and the world after that worshipped or understood this Noah to be this great patriarch that they looked up to. In Samaria and Egypt, they made them out to be deities. Well, that didn't mean what we think of today. They didn't say they were gods. They said they were beings, humans, that lived on a mountain somewhere. And it's all sort of chopped up into this parable. Because where did Noah really park his boat? On Mount Ararat, which is Eretz, which is the earth. And the pinnacle of the earth, or the center of all the geographical locations of the top side of the globe, the other side's the abyss, the water, but all the around in the ring of fire, there is all this landmass. In the center of that, the geographical location of all land masses on earth is Heliopolis, where if you go to the Bible, you'll find that that city is also called Bethel, or Emmaus, or On, the city of On, which is John. And that's Bethany, or the house of On, where Lazarus was, Lazarus, and Mary and Martha, whom Jesus loved more than all the rest, and was far beyond the river Jordan, out in the wilderness, with another priesthood, which history tells us, Josephus says, there was a Jerusalem at Heliopolis, and they baptized, and they taught truths, and they had a pinnacle on their temple, which represented our universe, which revolves around the pinnacle. The whole thing, the mountain is the earth, and at the top of the earth is the North Pole, and those stars at the North Pole never go down over the horizon. And the other stars in astrology go up and they go down, and that's the race of humans on the earth, going down into Tartarus, because the human race took this maze down and partook of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, initiated by our mother Eve, that we might become like deity. And when we rise on the horizon, we'll all ascend. The stars shall ascend, because we were all once, right, morning stars, clapping our hands for joy. Why morning stars? Because we're the stars that rise on the horizon in the morning. And we're the ones that then are exalted and get our white robes, our light bodies, and we're exalted to our Father's throne, which is in the north, where it never goes down. We're always immortal beings. We put on immortality. But this is a story that's in all of the astrological teachings, the Greek mythologies, the Egyptian hieroglyphs, and in your Bible, and written in the stars, and in the great pyramid, which Isaiah 19:19 says is a pillar unto the Lord, at the midst and at the border thereof in Egypt, which would be Cairo, which is the midst or the line or border between north and southern Egypt. So I'm not saying any of this information is true. I'm saying that they have hidden this information, told you not to investigate it, and then they themselves have tried to understand it, like Aleister Crowley or the first century Simon the Magus, who was a student of John the Baptist, and when John died, took over the organization and made this sort of priesthood that didn't have the Holy Spirit or knew the true teaching that Christ brought, and didn't listen to John and said, go follow him, but started his own little cult. And to this day, there are many individuals that are still going back unto Simon Magus, and this has asserted itself as Aleister Crowley and his dark cult, and Albert Pike that turned Masonry and these ancient teachings of St. John and the Knights of St. John from Mary Magdalene and Jesus Christ in the Languedoc, from Marseille and Montpellier up the Rhone River all the way to Paris, that were driven out by the Catholics who were being run by the Goths and taken over by the Visigoths in 405. And they drove out Mary Magdalene and her children from France and then to Spain. And then they drove them out of there in the Spanish Inquisition. And they went to Scotland and Ireland and Portugal, and finally the Isle of Man, and then to Nova Scotia and Brazil and the Carolinas and Florida and all of that now. Their beautiful civilization, their capital being at Chicago, has now been burned with fire, and they've tried to cover over the 1,000-year reign of St. John the Prester, who shall remain until he comes. Now, how did John the Prester remain until he came? Well, it may be a symbol of the fact that it's a priesthood. Each one was knighted and ordained and took over by the laying on of hands the position, because Jesus chose not only 12 to sit on thrones, which is a kingdom, but 72 also, which is the Sanhedrin, that was established in Marseille, France, and with the Knights Templars came to America and created the Constitution, which is their last hurrah until they were disbanded. And now the battle is between the mind and good and evil. And so we've already been taught our lessons, and all of us know the truth. We got to be careful we're not deceived. Now, I'm going to share something with you that you've never heard before, and I don't think anyone's ever had this explanation or put this in a book or anything. And when I'm done telling you this, which is going to do just a minute or two to explain this, you will know beyond any doubt that what I am telling you is the truth. And when you know that, you will know that the entire... Boy, it's thundering. It's going to rain again. The entire concept or model of our solar system is completely and entirely false, which means they couldn't possibly have gone to any moon if it's way out there and the stars are way out there, because they don't know any of it. Oh, here's the thing. If you look up at the moon, you see a full moon, then there's a crescent and a half moon, all this. Well, then it goes away. It disappears. But when it comes back, they call this waxing and waning. When it comes back, it's a new moon, and the crescent is on the opposite side now. Now, they probably want you to believe that it's because the Earth is in the way, and it's somehow... I don't know exactly how because they explain it in different ways, and they don't really like to explain it. But, so some people have thought that it's the shadow of the Earth, and the moon is wobbling back and forth, waxing and waning behind us. And we always see the one side, and then there's another side that's the dark side. But here's the truth. The Earth does not revolve around the moon. The moon revolves around the Earth. Okay, I had to go to a different location because it was really coming down. I couldn't even hear myself think. And I want to be able to tell you this so that you can hear what I'm saying. You're still going to hear some thunder and rain in the background. But so we can prove that the moon revolves around the earth. Now, all right. So the crescent moon, half moon, the full moon, back to a crescent moon on the other side of the moon, from the angle that we're on the earth. We're looking at the moon. Now the crescent moon is on the left side. It was on the right, now it's on the left, and it goes around to you don't see any moon again. Now, you don't see any moon for a little while because the light is shining on the other side of the moon. See, there is no dark side of the moon. The light's on the other side. It's going around. And as the light comes back around, it starts a crescent. It starts coming around on the right side of the moon. It goes around till it gets full moon, and then it goes around to the left side and half moon and the crescent moon, and it disappears again. So you can literally see the sun, or whatever whatever's shining on the moon, or whatever is happening there on the moon, where you see one side of the moon lit up. It's always one half of the moon lit up. But from the angle that we are on the earth, looking at the moon, lit up at a time. First with the one side, goes around to the full, then around to the half on the other side and the crescent, and disappears. Now, if the moon's always facing us, the same side of the moon's always facing us, now this is going to be kind of hard to explain, then if the sun was directly behind the earth, then, and the moon would be right straight in the sky ahead of us, and the sun was always behind us, then we'd always have a full moon. Because from the earth's perspective, if the sun was behind us shining towards the moon, it would always be a full moon. But it doesn't have to change angles, the earth and the moon, for that to be true. Because remember, we're spinning every 24 hours. So as we're imagine that the earth is in the center, spinning away, and the sun and the moon are rotating around us. Well, the sun obviously rotates every 24 hours, night and day. Or the earth is spinning. But the moon is also rotating in comparison to the sun, because you can literally see the same side of the moon, and the half of the moon that's lit up goes all the way around. So the sun is going around the moon as well, but not at the same ratio as it's going around the earth. It's going around the earth every 24 hours. It's going around the moon every 30 days. Now, how could that be? Well, if the moon is going around the earth every 30 days, imagine that the sun is going around the earth and the earth's in the center. Now, around us, the moon is going every 30 days. And this is, but the same side's always facing us. So we see the moon lit up on one side, then it disappears, and then it's lit up on the other side because it's going around us. But because we know that the sun's going around us every 24 hours, not us going around the sun. The earth is the footstool of the Lord. His head is the sun, the mind, and that's on the top. But his feet are on the footstool. He's standing on the earth. This is the stability, the foundation. The foundation does not move. The lights move around and circle around and make night and day. So if the sun goes around every 24 hours and the moon appears to have this angle of the sun every 30 days, while the moon is going around the earth, the sun is going around the earth, and it's the sun that's evidently shining on the moon. So if the sun is going around every 24 hours, that changes the angle from the perspective of the earth as we're looking at the moon. That changes our angle at the moon. Because we're kind of in lock here, the Earth and the moon. And we always see the same side of the moon, which means that the moon's not rotating as it's going around the Earth. But the moon is rotating in its perspective or angle to the sun, because we see the same side of the moon, but the light side of the moon is going all the way around like a carousel, like the horse going around on the carousel. So the sun is going around the moon. You can see as it shines on the moon, and it goes around the moon and lights up one side of the moon and goes around to the other side, and then behind, and it's a new moon, and then it comes back around and goes through the phases again. So there's a carousel going now on with the moon every 30 days. But since the sun seems to go around the Earth every 24 hours, then that means that within that 24 hours, the moon hasn't really gone around any distance. It takes 30 days for the moon to go around the Earth. So that would mean that the moon is literally going around the Earth itself, not all the way around the sun, even though it's going around the sun as it's in lockstep with the Earth, it's going around with the Earth. Then what's happening is the Earth is in the middle, and the moon is going around the Earth every 30 days. The same side of the moon is always facing us. Now, because the moon is going around us, then it's going to be at a different angle to the sun. Every 30 days, it's going to have a different angle, because it takes 30 days. If it's facing us, then that one side of the moon is always going to be facing us. But the sun, or the angle to the sun, is going to be changing as it's going around. So now the sun is going around every 24 hours. But that's only because the Earth is spinning while this whole process is happening. We're spinning every 24 hours. Now, we're also, while we're spinning and while the moon is going around us every 30 days, we're spinning every 24 hours. The sun is going around both the Earth and the moon every 360 days, or 365 days and forth. And that's the whole process. There's no other way to understand the moon and the light on the moon any differently than what I explained. Simply because, and this is a fact that most people are not aware of, that when you see a full moon, it begins to dissipate until it disappears. And it comes back, and the sun comes back on the other side now. And the only reason for that light on the moon being a crescent on the opposite side of the moon now is because the light has gone all the way around the moon. And it'll do that every 30 days because the moon is going around the Earth every 30 days and changing the angle and spinning because it's always facing us. So it's changing the angle that it is to the sun. And therefore, we get this different angle of the light on the moon every 30 days. And that means that there is no dark side of the moon whatsoever. And if there were people on the other side of the moon or cities, they would have day and night, just like they would on the Earth. And that would actually make sense, because if they're living over 1,000 years up there, and one of their days is 30 days, not 24 hours, not one day, but 30 days is one of their days, where their night and darkness rotates back and forth every 30 days. They would have 15 days of light and 15 days of darkness. And so if we're living, say, 70 years and we have a 24-hour day, then they would live, if they live 33.3 years, that would be 1,000 years in our time if they live to be 33. It's interesting that the 33rd degree and the 3-3 and everything's, Jesus supposedly lived 33 years. It has something to do with some particular time where some man, the higher man, is mature at 33. So just divide 30 into 1,000. If they live 1,000 years and divide 30 into it, it comes out that they live 33 years, having 30 days for their day. So their days are 30 days. And they'll live 33.3333 years on the moon. So that's quite interesting. Not that I have confirmation about any of this, but I'm only just showing you that this concept that the moon is a rotation that is higher than the earth, and then beyond that the sun is rotating. And if there were people on the sun, then they probably would live maybe 12,000 years or much longer time. And then you go all the way until you get to Polaris, where the people there, they don't rotate at all, and therefore they just live forever. But anyway, guys, I've rambled on another hour. I'm going to put that other hour, which is better than this hour, I'll put that up tomorrow and get this uploaded now because we're over an hour already. So I'm going to wish you guys a wonderful evening. Hope and pray the Lord will bless you. And the Lord loves you, as you guys know. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Lord will be with you. His grace and his peace. Have a good one.